again, everybody. This is Derek, and I am coming back at you with another Wargaming and Miniature video. And in this video, we're going to continue on with my American War of Independence project update for Land of the Free. Alright, so as you can see right here, we've got a large brigade, or large battalion, I should say, of Grenadiers. Each regiment at Freeman's farm detached their Grenadiers to a combined battalion of Grenadiers. The Grenadier unit was large, so I made it 5 bases according to the Land of the Free rules, which conveniently allowed me to make each stand come from a different regiment. So you might notice that like the far left stand has blue facings, and the second from the right has green. You got the far right has yellow. Also, the command stand is yellow, and then the one just to the left of the command stand has buff. Now, those are the facing colors of the regiments that participate in the Freeman's Farm First Battle of Saratoga. So you have the 9th, the 20th, the 21st, the 24th, and the 62nd. Now, I proceeded to paint these a slightly different way than I normally paint my figures. I primed them with a deep red, like almost an imperial red, almost a red jacket color. The entire figure was primed that color, and I noticed it was just a little bit too dark. So then I went back over the figures with Danger Red, or maybe it was Pure Red, from Warlord Army Painter. And then from there, I proceeded to, paint the figure as normal, flesh, black, white pants, and small clothes, and wings, and all that, and then the haversacks, etc., right? But it saved me quite a bit of time spraying it red, because normally I would spray it brown or black, sometimes white or gray. Those are my go-to primer colors, but I thought I'd try to save some time by priming it red. Now, in this case, it did, because when I painted the red jackets, I felt like why am I painting red on top of red? Well, the red underneath is a lot darker. It was, and it works for shadowing. So all I really had to do was highlight a little bit red on top of the red jacket, and I was off to the races. Of course, these guys are based with the European mud and the flock. Now, the flock, I tried. I don't know. I just have a compunction or something, a limitation in my mind, where I tried to do a little glue coverage to allow the mud underneath to kind of shine through, but I tend to cover more than I would like. Like the the command stand is covered pretty much exactly how I wanted the entire regiment to be covered. But as you can see, and maybe the unit on the far left, but you can see the flock. I put a little bit too much. Now I considered using a smaller static grass, and I also even considered using a longer static grass, but through all my years of experimentation with shorter and longer static grasses, I decided to stay with my Knock 2.5 Spring Meadow um, static grass, and I think it looks good. Um, Now these guys are bear skins, and so it'll really stand out on the battlefield with their like red in the back and all that. But historically, at Freeman's farm, the Grenadiers would probably have discarded their bear skins for a cut down hat, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted the glorious bearskin hat. Now, figure wise, this entire battalion is made with Blue Moon. Uh, I had ordered some Stone Mountain, some Peter Pig, some Blue Moon, and Old Glory British Grenadiers. Uh, I don't need all of those British Grenadiers, but I wanted to have them in my hot little hands to see which is the best figure for my unit and which ones of the figures would satisfy my needs. And I decided on the Blue Moon figures, because they're all marching, shoulder arms, etc., etc. But Blue Moon Grenadiers didn't have any command stand figures. They just had 30 Grenadiers, which would have been perfectly fine. But I wanted to input some variety to the command stand. Now, the other sets had commanders like maybe with standard flag bearers, drummers. Also, their officers might have had tricorns or whatever. And I settled on the Peter Pig 30 command figures in the front middle. There's an officer, he's wearing a bearskin. All the drummers pretty much have bearskins anyway, even for the line regiments. But there's also an engineer. This engineer comes out of one of those Peter Pig infantry command. It doesn't specify Grenadier, Lights, or anything like that. But I pulled it out because I think it would, it really identifies the command element as a command element because there's no flags. The reason why there's no flag is because it's a combined battalion. Each of the regiments would have dispatched their grenadier companies and said, go over there, attach yourself to this guy because he's going to command the grenadiers. And they would not have brought the regimental flag along with them. That would have been with the regiment itself. So the grenadiers wouldn't have, and same thing with the lights. The light battalion is also combined and it wouldn't have a flag either. So I needed some other way to differentiate the command stand, the leader stand. I don't have to. You can You can just put a mark on it, or I could have painted the back of the stand with a little label or something that said they were the leader. But I decided that give it a little variety. Also, you'll notice that all four sides of the bases are black because I didn't want to give each stand its unique facing color back, because when you combine them into a battalion, it would have been a motley crew, and I don't want that. I wanted it to be uniform, so I just painted them all black. All right, well, that's enough of the figures that I've done. I've only done this one battalion, but I've done a little bit of other brain work. I'm going to let this play while I talk about it. One thing I've done is I recorded a couple of episodes for the Land of the Free boot camp. I've already edited and uploaded the melee one. So the next one is going to be talking about discipline and morale, and that's going to be edited and uploaded in the next couple of days. So keep your eyes open. I'm chugging along with the Land of the Free boot camp videos. Now, something I do want to mention is that during the Land of the Free boot camps, positioning the figures on the table with terrain and measuring movement distances and shooting ranges, etc., it felt like the Land of the Free rules, movement ranges, and shooting ranges were written with 25 millimeter figure or 28 millimeter figures in mind, not 15 millimeter. Because when I put my 15 millimeter figures on the table, and I imagine playing on a table of 4x6, and a musket would shoot 12 inches and a rifle would shoot 18 inches, it seems like it's disproportionate to the ground scale or the figure scale. It seems way too large, in my opinion. So I compare it to black powder, which also is 12 inches for a musket, but they have they're not hiding the fact that they're writing their rules for 28 millimeter. They say if you're playing a smaller scale, just half the ranges and the movement, which that works perfectly fine. And I that's what I normally do when I play black powder. But I also have British Grenadier, which is more at this scale, right? Where you have companies and your small regiments and close range engagements, a lot of terrain, stuff like that. Because if you look at the Land of the Free ranges, it's halfway across the table. I felt like a 12-inch musket shot is just way too far. So I've been putting a little bit of thought into it. Now, British Grenadier, they have inches for their 25, 28 millimeter scale, but then they have a totally separate number in centimeters for their 15 millimeter scale. So it's not like 12 inches for a musket and then 12 centimeters for 15 millimeter. It's actually not like that. All right, now as you know, my cutting mat here has 10 millimeter squares, And I have a ruler here with inches and millimeters from Westcott, and I'm going to compare British Grenadier ranges and centimeter usage and try to let you see what's going through my mind. Okay, we're just going to use the basic infantry musket at first, right? So you have a regiment here, right? And it can shoot all the way over to here with no penalties or no modifiers. And that is quite a distance, in my opinion, based on the scale of the figure. I would expect it to be a lot shorter. And then imagine adding 6 more inches for a rifled musket. It wouldn't even be on the camera, it would be so big. Now, I think that would be perfectly fine with 28 millimeter models. So if you're playing with your Warlord Games 28 millimeter American War of Independence or 7 Years' War, whatever you've got, I think the ranges in this book, Land of the Free, is perfectly legit. But when you go to 15 millimeter, I think it needs to be reduced. So let's take a look at British Grenadier, which is another rule set that I played for a few years. And let's take a look. But I played it in 28 millimeter at the time, so I didn't really feel this pressure. But now that I've converted everything, or am converting everything to 15 millimeter, and then I did the boot camp, it felt extended. It just felt too long. So let's take a look. I keep saying let's take a look, and then I keep saying stuff. Okay, the musket. Now, in British Grenadier, you have an effective and a long range. All I care about is the maximum range, the long range. And the musket shows 12 inches, which is this. But they say that is for 28 millimeter models. They use 20 centimeters is the 15 millimeter range. 20 centimeters from here to there is a good amount of reduction, right? So do I think this is a better range? Hell yes, I do. I think that's a much better range. Now rifles, the way they've got their rifles, they've got a 14-inch, which is not much different than Land of the Free. Land of the Free is trying to be judicious and, make easy measurements, and they say 18 inches, which that's fine. But in centimeters, it's only slightly larger. It's 24 centimeters. So there's a musket shot and there's a rifle shot. That doesn't seem to be much further in 15 millimeter. In 25, 28 millimeter, it goes from 12 to 14. So if I was to bring this ruler, that would be a musket shot. That would be a rifle shot. That's in 28 millimeter. But in 15 millimeter, you got a 20 centimeter musket shot and a 24 rifle shot. I really like these ranges better. And then they have carbines, which would be your like dragoons and stuff like that. They have the shorter muskets. They only shoot 6 inches in 28 millimeter, but they changed that to 10 centimeters with 15 millimeter. So that would be right there, which equates to the 6 inches equates to Land of the Free, no problem. The 12 inches equates to Land of the Free, no problem. The only slight difference would be the rifle. Instead of it being 18 inches, as in Land of the Free, it's only 14 inches in British Grenadier. All right, so now if I was to do this conversion for Land of the Free, I would want to make some range rulers. And that way I can have like a musket at 20 and I could have a rifle at 24 and then mixed at 10, and I could just make some range rulers. Or I could do the math, right? And let's look at inches now. And this is what I'm leaning on. So I'm thinking it's a little bit different, but I could go with 4 inches for muskets or mixed weapons. I could go with 8 inches for muskets, and then you would think it would be 12 inches for rifles because of the Land of the Free does an extra 6 inches. And if 6 inches is 4, 12 is 8, and 18 would be 12, that would be acceptable on the table, I think. Personally, this gives rifles the added bonus. It really makes them impactful. Plus, it fits everything better on the table, in my opinion. So I'm thinking 2/3. Break it down to 2/3. 4, 8, and 12. You got an artillery piece that's shooting 36 inches. With these scales at 2/3, it would be shooting, instead of 3 feet, it would be shooting at 2 feet or 24 inches, which I think would be halfway across the table. And then your heavy artillery that shoots 48 inches, so 32 inches for one of the heavier guns. And I think that works out really good. Now, if I look at artillery ranges in British Grenadier, they actually break the artillery ranges down by gun size, which you don't do in Land of the Free. Their 3 to 4 pounders have a 36-inch range. And then they break it down to 60 centimeters, which 60 centimeters is, if you go with 30 centimeters being approximately 2 feet, our math is good. A 6-pounder, which is kind of your standard gun of the period, shoots 42 inches or 70 centimeters. No, just over 2 feet. Yeah, so 28 inches. So 2 feet plus 4 inches. I definitely am going to do that. Artillery, I've decided artillery, I am going to implement different ranges based on the size of the gun, because I think that is more appropriate. So, those 3 pounders, the 6 pounders, the 12 pounders, And then the infantry ranges, muskets and rifles and mixed weapons, I'm going to implement a 2/3 rule. Okay, so 2/3. Well, the command sphere of influence is either 12 or 18 inches. So again, it's going to be 8 or 12 inches. So that's going to be just fine when I make my range rulers. There is a 1-inch range, and there's also a 3-inch range in Land of the Free. So I'll need to make a 2-inch for the 3-inch range, and I'll need to make a 20 millimeter or a 20 millimeters is 3/4. So I'll need to figure out what 1 or 2/3 is, and then make that, because 1-inch close support would be 2/3. Now I could leave it at 1 inch and just say, hey, it's no big deal, or use 20 millimeter to say that's fine for close support, which fudging the ranges would be just fine. As long as everybody on the table is using the same range rulers, there wouldn't be any kind of problem. Land of the Free says if you are going to make range rulers, do 1, 3, 6, and 12 as your ranges, where in my case, I'll be able to make like a 12-inch range ruler, but I'll be able to make that for rifles. So you'll have rifles, muskets, mixed. You'll have the 3-inch, which will wind up actually being 2 inches, and then the 3/4 or 2 centimeters, which would be your close. Yeah, I would need a 3-inch marker, which in this scenario would be actually a 2-inch, and that is for point blank shooting. That's point blank. That's muskets. That's rifles. This is mixed. I think that works fine. Those ranges work really well with 15 millimeter models, in my opinion, visually. Okay, so that's going to affect movement as well. But if you're using the range rulers for movement, there should be no problem. Now in British Grenadier, it only gives the 28 millimeter movement ranges. So you have to kind of adjust on your own. But in Land of the Free, remember, everything is at the 3, 6, 9, or 12, or 1 movement range. So like infantry that move backwards move 1 inch, and that would be marked as 2 centimeters, right? Their normal move is 3 inches, where in this case would be 2, right? And then their march column or charge would be 6, which would technically be 4. So basically it brings everything tighter, smaller, and I think I like it. One thing you might have noticed that if you've been following my Land of the Free not boot camps, my project updates, I built some town sectors or built up areas on 6-inch squares, because I thought the 9-inch square was just way too big. I felt like there were so many figures that could fit on a 9-inch. So I took it upon myself to reduce it to 6-inch, where if you think about it, that is exactly the reduction of the ranges that we're using, the 2/3 ranges. They do have uh, a large template being 12 inches, which, as you know, would be an 8-inch square if you did the math. And there's also a tiny building, which is 3 inches, which would wind up being a 2-inch square. So 50 millimeter square. That's pretty cool. And a small building would be on a 6-inch template, which technically would be a 4-inch square. So I think I can make some tiny building templates and some small building templates using 2 and 4-inch squares. The large templates, I don't think I'm going to do any of those. I could just use a couple of my 4-inch templates to represent a large built up area because the math kind of works out really well. Okay, so just so you know, shooting, let me recap a little bit. Shooting ranges, well, let's rephrase that. All measurements in Land of the Free, I'm going to convert to a 2/3 size. I think that is going to be a better uh, a better representation of the ranges of the weapons, etc., etc. All right, so I was thinking, and this is the next topic: artillery, artillery limbers. I've got a 2-gun battery. I've been looking at the sizes of guns in Land of the Free, or I should say batteries. They don't have a tiny. They don't have a tiny. They only have small, medium, and large artillery batteries. So I've been thinking that there's never going to be a time when I'm going to use one gun, as if I go strictly by the book. Which, as you know, I'm not going to be going strictly by the book because I'm that way. So I'm going to do it slightly different. Here, let's pull out one more base just to kind of give you a representation. I'm going to use one gun to represent a small battery because there's no tinies. Tinies don't exist in the rules. And then I will use 2 guns to represent your medium normal battery. And most gamers use 2 guns to represent batteries, and that's the way I plan to do it. 1 gun would represent a half battery or small, and then 2 guns would represent your medium or standard or normal battery. And then the 3rd gun, which I didn't pull out, but if I had a 3rd gun, that would be a large battery. I won't need more than 3 guns in a battery. And the majority of my batteries that I'm putting together for Freeman's Farm are 2 guns anyway. Yeah, and that's going to represent a standard battery. 1 gun is going to represent a small battery. That falls in line with the 2/3 measurement scale as well. Not that that has anything to do with ranges, but it does kind of fall into the 2/3 idea. I've looked in the book at some of their examples, and they show a couple of battles that were being performed, and there's like 1 gun guarding a bridge or 1 gun on a hill. And according to the rules, if you go strictly by the rules, there's no way that can happen. So, but the way I'm representing them, 1 gun being a small battery, then that's fine, right? And 2 guns being a medium and 3 guns being a large. Now, in Land of the Free, The way you represent unlimbered and limbered is only represented by the facings of your units. So a unit online, like in battle line like this or what have you, is considered unlimbered or ready to fire, right? And units all facing one behind the other in trail or column is considered march column or limbered. Well, that eliminates the need for any limber markers. But lo and behold, I plan to play with limber markers. So I've been contemplating, how am I going to do this? I pulled some bases out from my collection, and this is a 40 by 80, which is equivalent to 2 stands. I pulled out a 40 by 60, which is a little bit shorter, and of course a 40 by 40. Okay, so because I'm trying to figure out how I want to represent limbers on the table and how I want to change the formation into a limbered versus unlimbered. Well, with the galloper guns or the 3-inch guns or any of the small, like tiny 3-inch guns, I don't think it needs a limber harness, right? I don't think it needs, a wheeled limber. Because I think what they did was they just attached the trail of a 3-inch grasshopper via rope to a horse. Maybe cinched it up nice and tight up against the harness of the horse, or had a couple of pieces of wood dangling off of the back of the horse, which I could easily construct using some balsa or toothpicks or whatever. And I've got a bunch of limber horses. I got, I don't know, hundreds? No, I've got at least 16 limber horses here. Some with riders, some without. The one with the rider doesn't have any harness, but I have some with harnesses, and these guys came from Stone Mountain, right? So I could easily just put a horse, maybe a handler on a small 40 millimeter base, building a little bit of a galloper style harness on the back, and just calling that a limber. And that would be a non, it wouldn't take up a huge amount of space on the table, causing any kind of disruptions or anything. So for my, not the tiny batteries, but the small guns, like 3-inch guns, maybe 3-pound, maybe even a 4-pounder, can be just a handler with a horse and a manufactured galloper style harness, which I know I can make. And so I can just make a couple of those. I don't know how many I can make, 3 or 4 of them. It doesn't matter. I can make a few of them. Because the limber crews of the period were not military, they were civilians, I can do both. I mean, I can just make them and then use them on either side. All the limbers can be used by either side. So just imagine this being, it doesn't want to stand up because I haven't cleaned it or anything. So imagine this being a galloper limber, and then I've got a medium-sized battery of 2 guns. I would just put the limber behind it, just like that, right? And one of these guns is going to be designated the leader, because every regiment has to have a leader. So when they form into march column, instead of just going, or limbered, instead of just going like this and saying they're now limbered, what I'll do is place the limber in front. Now, what this does on the table is this would extend the unit by 1 stand, but which means it'll look better on the table, because you'll have a longer train, and it'll simulate being limbered better, in my opinion. Plus, this will bring this unit up 1 stand, which, as you already know, I've already decided to reduce them by 1 stand to represent like a medium battery. So now what else would that do if I have a tiny battery? Actually, they don't have tiny batteries in Land of the Free. They have small batteries. And there is a small battery in Freeman's Farm. It's an American Grasshopper gun. If it had its limber behind it, then you know it's unlimbered, right? Or turned sideways, because that's what I would do. I would turn the limber sideways, signifying that it's not hooked up. Now, we would switch places and turn it to represent, and I could even turn the gun around, make it look like it's actually limbered or what have you. But what this does is it makes a single unit, a single figure unit, distinct when it limbers. Because how do you know he's unlimbered or unlimbered? Because there's nobody beside him showing that he's unlimbered, and there's nobody behind him showing you that he is limbered. He's only 1 stand. So by adding this limber model, you're actually designating limbered or unlimbered to a single cannon unit. So that's a definite 100% going to happen. Okay? But now let's talk about unit or guns that might be a little bit larger, like a 6-pounder. Well, I thought about using this because it is the same size as 2 bases, and it would easily fit, your limber and your. I push this harness. That doesn't take up very much space, but this base does. So I've decided to, and it's too big for a 40, which would have been perfect. So I'm going to go with a 60 or maybe a 50. And I'll talk about that in a bit. So we'll put these, a single horse with the harness and the wheels and everything will fit nicely on a 60. It might even fit on a 50. Because if this is 60, that's 50. Yeah, it's going to fit. Just a 1-horse limber would fit easily on a 50. Now, I don't own any 40 by 50 bases. So I went ahead and ordered some. through war bases. Yeah, these 40 by 80s, way too big. I didn't think I needed them. Even if I did a 2-horse limber, I still think these are too big. With the 60, actually a 2-horse, the 40 by 80 would be good for a 2-horse limber. Because the limber would be approximately there. This horse would be approximately there. And then the second horse would be approximately there. Yeah, so that's a good length for a 2-horse limber. The issue I'm having is, or I'm self-imposing the issue upon myself, is that if this is the limber and this is the battery, and I've got it sitting behind the unit like that, which is perfectly fine. But when I go to limber up, we're going to take the leader, we're going to replace him with the limber, right? Because it's just like a formation change. And then we're going to put the guns behind the limber. That just seems very long. Now, I've considered deleting or temporarily removing one of the stands, and that would work just fine for the battery. Because all that does is it extends the length of the limbered unit only by one stand. Right? Because, and if it was a large gun battery with 3 guns, that's extending the battery just way too much, in my opinion. So yeah, I think I will temporarily pull a gun if I'm using the large batteries or large limbers. I don't think I'm going to do very many of these. I think they're all going to be these, which, like I said, I'm going to be putting on a 50 millimeter base. This being 60. I'm going to overlap just by 1. Even for 2 figures, that's not terrible. I could decide to pull one, but I think this is the way it's going to be. We're going to have the limber. We're going to have the horse. And I think that'll be just fine. And then if I've got a 3rd gun, that's not terribly too long. I'm not going to have very many batteries with 3 guns, but occasionally there will be. All right, so let's recap the day. I showed you my British Grenadiers that I finished. I showed you the fact that we're going to go to a 2/3 range measurement. I need to make some range rulers with the 2/3 measurements. 1, 3, 6, 9, and 12 inches will wind up being smaller. I can actually get 18 inches on a 12-inch measuring stick. We talked about limbers. Now, this is a 3 millimeter, but I don't plan to ever use very many of those. And I only have 3 of these. The 60 millimeter, but I don't think I want to do 60 millimeter. I think I'm going to do 50. Hopefully I ordered some 50s. I'll have to double check my order from War Bases. I can definitely do some Galloper gun bases, but I'm going to hold off on doing any of my limbers until those bases come in. So I thought I was going to do limbers this week, but I couldn't settle on base sizes, and then when I did, I wound up not having the ones that I needed. So we'll have to do. I'll either do some small building templates, like 4-inch templates, or 2-inch templates. I don't really foresee doing a 2-inch template for a tiny unit. It would just be like an outhouse or something. But I do foresee doing some smaller building templates, like maybe 4 inches. And I also have some fencing I need to do. Oh yeah, the last thing I wanted to touch on. Dang. Sorry, guys. All right, I just wanted to show you the progress using my spreadsheet here. The British battalions that are in red and the guns that are in red are complete, right? They are fully. Here's the Grenadiers. I just finished the 5 bases. The 20th and the 21st are supposed to be small, so I'm going to take one of their bases that I had finished from each of them and combine it with the 24th to make the 24th also a large battalion. But the 21st and the 20th are going to be small battalions with 2 bases. So yeah, so all of that is pretty much finished. The 21st I have not completed. So those are the Fusiliers. I need to work on those. The pickets and the Indians. The pickets would be basically like Tories, militia style civilians or what have you. But basically, they have the same rules as Indians. And I'm taking a lot of this organization from British Grenadier. Now, in British Grenadier, their units are done by figures, how many figures are in a unit. And what I've done is I've converted the figure count to a Land of the Free unit size. So, like a medium unit of 18 figures equates to 18 figures on a 3-figure base or 3-stand base. If it's 20 to 24, it's going to be large. And then if it's 12, it's going to be small. Dearborn's light infantry is 12, so it should be small, and it's right off the camera. You can barely see it. Now, same thing on this side. The Continentals, if it's in blue, it means that unit is finished. And if it's in yellow, anything that's in yellow means I have the figures. I just haven't painted them, assembled them or what have you. Now, in Riddisill's brigade, I have the figures. I double checked. I do have the figures. I just need. I decided to go ahead and make him large because he's supposed to be large based on this calculation. And then I've only done the Rets. So I was thinking I was going to do Riddisill next. That's what I'm thinking. But you can see the units over here that are not complete. Now, the Green Mountain Boys, or Stark's Militia, I had some heated discussions telling me they're not militia, right? They're state units, which definition of militia, state unit, or a continental unit, or anything like that is basically, um, what am I trying to say? It's ignore the terminology. Don't try to shoehorn them into a specific type of unit based on what I'm calling them. What will matter is what kind of capabilities that I assign them, and the Green Mountain Boys are not going to be assigned militia stats. They're going to be assigned like a second line or second rate uh, unit. So they're kind of like halfway between a line and a militia. They're kind of in the middle. Okay, but either way, it doesn't make that big of a deal because doing my research, the scenario doesn't have them there. It doesn't show the Green Mountain Boys or a second militia unit in the scenario. So I might just, even though according to the history of the Green Mountain Boys, they say that they were at Freeman's farm. So I'll have to double check that, maybe compare it versus a few other TONEs and see if they really were there. There are other British regiments that say they were at Freeman's farm, like there was a Canadian unit and there was a German unit that was at Freeman's farm that's not represented in this scenario. So I might work on trying to figure out exactly who is there. But just because they were at Freeman's farm doesn't mean they participated in any significant way to the battle. They might have been halfway across the map, holding a crossroads that never got engaged. So the scenario designer decided not to include them in the game because all it would do is just slow everything down. You know? Yeah, because Warlords, Freeman's Farm scenario, has loyalists. They have Canadians. They have a unit called Marksmen. But then when you look at the Brunswickers, they only give you Grenadiers and Lights. So it doesn't, and Jaegers. They don't really have the full TONE, in my opinion. So I'll figure out what I want to do with that. But I definitely need to do Morgan's Rifleman. I have the Morgan figure that I'd like to do. I want to do the 2nd New Hampshire for sure. And then I want to finish these two. The Green Mountain Boys, I want to do them, but I'll probably only do them if I decide to include the Loyalists and the Canadians over here in Fraser's brigade, which he's pretty much locked up in a fort, and he doesn't sally forth anyway. So and those troops show up late, and that's probably why they're not being represented. All right, I just want to show that off and kind of talk about it a little bit. Thanks for coming out and checking out this really long project update. But now you're fully updated, and I will catch you in the next one.